Today's guided lesson for the competency exam is going to focus solely on task 16. Task 16 is SOAP notes or session notes or progress notes, whatever your analyst wants to call them. And they're going to require you to write a session note to complete the competency exam. Now, it would be a very difficult thing to do if you've never even had a session, but they expect you to know how to do it. So for every company you work for, they're probably going to want you to write your session note differently. Some companies have, at least here in Florida, and I think it might be due to the language barrier, or because we have a lot of immigrants here in Florida, or because sometimes the agency is so huge that supervisors can't review all the session notes for their caseloads. So sometimes they have in the fill in the blank ones. So you would basically, they have a template and then you just click and then you would just put something in there. So some agencies have that. I never worked for an agency like that. I always had to write my session notes. My session notes when I worked at the center where I worked, I had to write my session notes in a very specific way because I was a Medicaid provider at that point. Medicaid can pause payment for services if they see anything in a session note that they don't like or whatever. I don't know. I really don't know what they're thinking when they're reading a session note, but sometimes they'll flag your note and then they'll pause payment and you have to call Medicaid and figure out what to do next because your Medicaid number is not going to be active anymore because of something written in a note or whatever. You probably didn't write something the right way or whatever. That didn't happen to me, but it did happen to a few people. Well, I would say a couple of people I knew at the center. So if you are a Medicaid provider, make sure, and your supervisor is gonna make sure that your note is written, or they should make sure that your note is written in a way that's acceptable for Medicaid and for Medicaid clients or learners. So this is how, I suppose you've had some time to look at this while I've been doing my little introduction here. This is how I was trained to write a session note. I just want to throw this in here. My second year of writing session notes at the center, this is a much better session note than I ever wrote working at an agency for the home. And if you work at an agency for the home, I would still write, and you're not a Medicaid provider, I would still write my session note like this. Essentially, this is written in ABC format, antecedent, behavior, consequence. And I'll get into that in a second once we get there. So you're going to start with that you met the learner wherever, at what time. That's a great way to start. Then you're going to, so I have it here, let me show you, right? RBT met with the learner at either the center name during the agreed upon time or scheduled time. Now, you're always going to write your session note in third person. You're not going to include your name and you're not going to include the client's name or the learner's name. Most of the time. I would say most analysts are going to tell you do not do that. My clinical director, when I worked at the center, said I could include the learner's name. Actually, that's what she wanted. She didn't want us to write their initials. She didn't want us to write learner or client. She wanted us to write their name. And there was never any problem with the insurances when we wrote their name. So I don't know why, and we were Medicaid providers, so I don't know why some analysts don't want you to write their name. They're going to tell you it's because of the insurance, because that's what I heard before. But I mean, I don't know. I'm just advising you not to write their name and to address them as learner, because most agencies don't want you to write their name. I understand that it can be a HIPAA violation, but for a session note, when you're writing their name in a session note, it's not a HIPAA violation, because the session note is included with, it's not the only part of the form that's submitted to the insurance, right? The actual note itself is not the only thing that's submitted to the insurance. There's another part. There are other parts to when you're filling in a note. And don't worry about the other parts, but all I really want to say, you only need to worry about what you need to write. But what I'm trying to say is that that form that has your note on it that is submitted to the insurance already has the learner's name. So I don't know, and it has their full name, and it's not abbreviated or anything. It has their name on it. So I don't know why there are analysts that tell you you can't write their name in the note if their name is already on the form. I don't understand, and they would tell you because it's a HIPAA violation, and it's not, because their name is already on the form. So whatever. I honestly, that's kind of something that really gets to me, because when we say client, or when we say learner, that's a very impersonal thing to write about a person that you're treating and that you're giving services to. The fact that you're not addressing them by their name. It's really impersonal, and it's, you know, they're just looking at them as basically people that make the company money, learners. How many, you know, and you can write learner because it sounds a little bit better than client, but there's a million learners, right? You might have 40 learners in an agency, but there might only be one Felix. See how that's different? But whatever, you know, that's how it is, and I do have a grievance about that when we can't use their name. So you're going to start again. Let me go back. RBT met with the learner at center name during the agreed upon time or the scheduled time, right? That's how I like to, that's how I was trained to write it, and that's a really good way to start, I would say, for anybody. Write when you met with the learner and the time, or where you met them and then the time. And then you're going to continue to write about their clinical appearance. The learner appeared as though, so what I wrote here, the learner appeared as though they were highly anticipating to attend session as evidenced. So this is really important. I'll read the whole thing. The learner appeared as though they were highly anticipating to attend session as evidenced by the RBT's observations of them saying hi to all of their peers, gathering materials commonly used in their BSP, such as markers and flashcards, and sitting at their designated area without the need of prompts from the RBT. So, you cannot simply say in a session note, the learner appeared as though they were highly anticipating to attend session, period, and then stop there. Well, this is not, it needs to be objective, right? And you need to write, how do you know this? What did this behavior look like? So then you would go ahead and write what highly anticipating looks like. Well, they said hi to everybody, they got their stuff, and then you describe, and then you go ahead and tell them what the stuff was, right? The markers and flashcards. And then they went ahead and sat down at their table, their designated area, without the RBT needing them to tell them anything. So when you say it like that, that is describing this behavior. So you need to show it. You need to show when you're writing. Then you're gonna go ahead and write what you collected data on, what behaviors you collected data on, right? So RBT collected data on maladaptive behaviors such as aggression, visual SSB, and task refusals. You likely, I don't know, depending on your learner, there might be more. There might be more behaviors you collected on, you collected data on. So when I say collected data on, I mean for every behavior you tracked. So like, look at this sentence. Look, RBT observed an absence of mouthing throughout session. So mouthing is another one of their behaviors, but the RBT didn't see that. Like, they didn't engage in that behavior, the learner. That might be mouthing, and so the only reason you would include something like this is if mouthing is like a behavior that's normally tracked, and then for this session it wasn't, and then you'd probably want to include that it wasn't, right? Because that's pretty significant, where normally you're taking data on mouthing, and then today you didn't see them mouth, and you want to write that down because that means that your interventions are working. They didn't engage in it. So they might have more behaviors than aggression, visual SSB, task refusals, and mouthing. They might have motor SSB, right? Or biting as a behavior. You don't have to write down every single behavior that your learner has. You just need to write down the ones they engaged in. That's it. And if there's one that they didn't engage in, and it's pretty significant that they didn't, write it down, because that shows progress, right? That's why some of these are called progress notes. Okay. Now you're gonna start writing. After you write what behaviors you tracked, now you're going to start writing in ABC format, meaning you're going to write the antecedent of what you did. So there's everything that you do in session is ABC, right? So there's always an antecedent, there's always a behavior, and there's always a consequence. That's life, right? So here we go, but it has to be specific to what you're doing in therapy. So when the RBT targeted VB map goal matched to sample trial, when the RBT targeted VB map goal matched to sample trial, okay, and where the learner was required to place like items together, RBT observed, so this would be the antecedent. RBT observed the learner completed the trial without error, and RBT reinforced the learner with a desired, tangible, and behavior-specific praise. So this is what I'm going to do here. This is the antecedent. And this is really only when you would be, this is why you need to know ABC ABC data, because it helps you really write your note. It's a good template, I guess, in a sense, to write your note. Let me see if I could zoom in here a little bit more so you can see it better. Right, that's probably a little bit better, right? I think 200 would be 200. Okay, that's fine, because we can go up and down. So here we go. Blue is antecedent, right? This is what happened. This is the behavior, right? The learner completed the trial without error. That's the behavior. And this is the consequence. RBT reinforced the learner with a desired, tangible, and behavior-specific praise. You're always going to reinforce your learner with behavior-specific praise. Why? Because in the natural setting, that's all they're gonna get. Usually, they're not usually gonna get a tangible for things. they're usually going to get behavior specific praise, like, oh, good job, you know. So you always want to write that you reinforce with behavior specific praise, and you don't just want to write it, you actually want to do it. And then also look at how specific this is. When the RBT targeted VB map goal match the sample trial, right? So we're saying it's from the VB map. We're saying what is it in the VB map? And then we're saying the learner was required to place like items together. That's very specific. And that's kind of how you want to write it. Here we go again. So you want to do a couple, right? Because your session notes should be at least like 8 to 10 sentences. I would imagine that's what your analyst would probably tell you to do. I don't know. I mean, for both agencies I worked for, my session note had to be 8 to 10 or 12 sentences. Okay, let's keep going. When RBT targeted VB map goal gross motor imitation trials by giving the learner a sequence of imitation trials, RBT observed the learner demonstrated the behavior with mastery. RBT reinforced with a highly desired tangible and behavior specific praise. So here we go again. This is the antecedent. This would be the, well, RBT observed, this is a behavior by the RBT, but this is really the behavior, right? But I'll put the whole thing in orange. If you want, I won't do that, just not to confuse you. I'll leave that in black, right? This is the behavior. The learner demonstrated the behavior with mastery. What did they do? They did the behavior perfectly, right? And then here we go. Here's the consequence. RBT reinforced with a highly desired tangible and behavior specific praise. Okay, so for agencies that don't have Medicaid, or I'm sorry, I get confused with Medicaid and Medicare. I'm pretty sure it's Medicaid. So for agencies that don't provide services to Medicaid clients, you're not going to do replacement skill goals. I mean, or you might, but you're not gonna collect data on it. You're only gonna do skill acquisition. Or that's the only thing you're gonna collect data on. Medicaid providers only want, really, they want the therapist to focus on replacement skill goals rather than skill acquisition goals. Skill acquisition goals are things that the learner learns, right? Well, I suppose replacement skill goals are also learning. Replacement skill goals you would do to teach your learner to behave appropriately, right? They're more about teaching behaviors, and skill acquisition goals is more teaching like how I wrote there, motor imitation, matching to sample, teaching them tax, things like that. That's basically, it's kind of like school, right? You're teaching them letters, numbers, shapes, how to differentiate between the two, between different things. Those would be skill acquisition. Replacement skill goals would be like what I wrote here. So RBT also conducted replacement skill goals for escape, such as teaching the learner to say no thank you when presented with an undesired tangible. When the RBT presented the learner with an undesired tangible, the learner engaged in aggression by knocking the item out of the RBT's hand with a swing of their arm and an open palm. RBT pointed to the item as a gestural prompt for the learner to pick up the item. The learner picked up the item and RBT reinforced with behavior-specific praise. So let me stop there for a second. Here we go. Here is the... So this is also... So now we're just saying what they're targeting, right? This is not the antecedent. This is just what the RBT is doing. So what they're planning to do, what they planned to do, or what they did, right? This is what the RBT did. This is where the antecedent starts. When the RBT presented the learner with an undesired tangible, that would be the antecedent right there. I don't know if you heard that. My kitten is like, I have a kitten and I don't know if the mic's picking that up. She's like sneezing or, I don't know. I think not sure what she's doing. Okay, I'm sorry if you hear that. That's just my kitten. She's okay though. I don't know why she's acting like that. So when the RBT presented the learner with an undesired tangible, that's the antecedent. This is the behavior. The learner engaged in aggression. But you're not just going to put the learner engaged in aggression. You're going to put how. You have to show the aggression. You have to describe the aggression, right? By knocking the item out of the RBT's hand, and you have to describe it very accurately with a swing of their arm and an open palm. Oh, you see, here's my cat. There she is. I'm sorry about that, guys. And an open palm. Oh, you guys don't even see. You don't even see the cat, you're looking at the screen. Sorry. Okay, and an open palm. This would be the behavior. And it has to be, so you can't just write the learner engaged in aggression by knocking the item out of the RBT's hand, period. Well, how did they knock? You have to keep going. How did they knock the item out of the RBT's hand? What did it look like? And so this is what it looked like. Right? Because they could tap, it could just look, the behavior can look differently. When something gets knocked out of your hand, well, was it lightly knocked out of your hand? Did they do it like this? Did they swing their arm and do it really like really aggressively like that? Like with more severity? So basically you want to show when you're writing it, you need to write what the severity of it looked like. I hope maybe you understand it better that way. Okay, so here we go. This is the consequence, right? RBT this would be the consequence because this is what happened after the behavior. This is a little bit, right? That would be the consequence. And then what we see here again is kind of like an antecedent. And then we see a behavior from the RBT, which is also like the consequence. So this here kind of gets a little bit tricky to sort of, I would say, decode. So I'll just leave that like that, but that's how you would write it. And then you can't just leave it like that, where the learner picked up the item and the RBT. So you're gonna reinforce for every desirable behavior that they do. It doesn't matter that they just knocked it out of your arm. When you point to it and they picked it up, you're gonna say thank you for picking it up. And then you're gonna do it again, right? RBT delivered the SD, here you go again, and prompted, you're gonna do it again and give them the correct response. And prompted the learner to say, no thank you. This is an antecedent, right? Oh, well, this is not ABC, so this is something else. This is what the RBT did. This is the RBT correcting the behavior, right? This is just correction. RBT, so this is correction, this is teaching. RBT ran a transfer trial to garner an independent response. You always need to end your trials with an independent response. Whether it's them giving you an independent response for the trial you're trying to run, or if they're just simply not understanding or not able to demonstrate the behavior you want them to do at that moment, you're gonna end that trial with something called a maintenance trial, which is by asking them to do something they already know how to do so that you can reinforce them and keep moving forward. You never want to end a trial, a trial or a program that you're doing by just finishing and then them not receiving any reinforcement or anything. You always want to end by getting an independent response from the learner. So RBT ran a transfer trial to garner an independent response. The learner completed the transfer trial and RBT reinforced with behavior-specific praise. So this could be the antecedent. I think we're doing that one. Ooh, I use different colors there, but it's blue. Okay, the learner completed the transfer trial, right? That's the behavior. And RBT reinforced with behavior-specific praise. Why didn't the RBT reinforce with a tangible or something else that they wanted? Because they didn't do it correctly the first time, and they actually engaged in a maladaptive behavior the first time. So when they do complete the transfer trial and when they do it correctly, you're not going to reinforce them with the thing that they really wanted. You may just reinforce them with something else, or I think simply reinforcing with behaviors, it just depends on your learners. Simply reinforcing with behavior-specific praises is all they're going to get. It depends on your learner and what the behavior was and all of that. So, and then you're going to conclude by writing, RBT will continue working on BSP goals next session. Remember, BSP, I think I spoke about this in one of my earlier teachings. BSP means behavior specific program or behavior support program. I'm not sure. It's either behavior, I'm pretty sure it's behavior support program. That's what it is. And that's how you're going to conclude it. Let me fix this here so it doesn't confuse you. It's not a different thing. Why is it right now? So this was supposed to be here. Okay, so to sum up, and I want to sum up here, you're going to start with when and where, and then you're going to start with their clinical appearance, and then you're going to, let me start again. You're going to start your session note with when and where session took place. Then you're going to describe your learner's clinical appearance and your emphasis on the word describe, okay? Afterwards, you're going to write the behaviors you tracked during session, which would be, when I say behaviors, I mean the challenging behaviors or maladaptive behaviors. After that, you're going to write your ABC data. You're going to pick 3 to 4 trials or 3 to 4 programs that you did during session, and you're going to write the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence that happened during that program, when you were doing that program. So you have this here, and I will take a picture of it and leave it at the end of this video so that you can also maybe screenshot it, save it, study it, so that you can have it for your exam. I will see you next class. It's funny, that's what I say in my other videos. I haven't said it in this series, but I will see you next class, and we're gonna do tasks 17 through 20, and that would conclude that would conclude this. No, it wouldn't conclude this. So that would conclude our test prep part of this series. I'll see you next class.